All right, so I want to make sure that we are okay, at least with the first 18 problems. So is there a problem from 1 to 9, one that would be nice to go over? Any problem in that first section? I just love these awkward moments we share in silence. So second period wanted us to do number 6, which I think is a good one. So we can go ahead and do number 6. All right. So this is in exponential form. We're going to convert it to log form. And what do we focus on first? The base, right? The 5. So the reason that we want the base is because the base of the exponent becomes the base of the log. So I'm going to write log base 5. And then what do I do after that?
A plus B.
Yeah, so I go, some teachers call it Tootsie Roll, some call it Cinnamon Roll, some call it Cloud, some call it Scorpion, whatever. You go around in a circle. So you'll notice what I did is I mixed them all up so that they weren't all written the same way, and that's because some students memorize it one way and then they aren't capable of going backwards. So whatever it is you do, you go to the opposite side of the equal sign and then you come back. So since the 5 is on the right side, that means the next thing is on the left side. So we're going to say log base 5 of this fraction equals 7t. So of this fraction equals 7t. Now, the fraction right here, you can put parentheses around it. When I have something that I'm logging that's kind of complicated like that, I tend to put it in parentheses. Technically, they would be unnecessary because that fraction is clearly like one chunk. So you don't need to group it because it's already grouped. But if it makes you feel better to put it in parentheses, it's not wrong to do so, okay? The only time you have to put parentheses is in a case where it's like something plus something or something minus something. So if you look at number 4, this one would need this one would need parentheses. All right. So let's go ahead and do number 4 because it's got a base of e, so that makes it kind of special. So what should we start with? So log base e of what? 4 minus t, and this time we have to put it in parentheses. We don't have a choice. Equals x, and what is special about log base e? That's actually an ln. So if you put this on your sheet, on like in a testing situation, I would give you most of the credit, but I would not give you all of it, because we don't call ln or log e, we don't call it log e, we call it ln. All right. Because 4 minus t is not a group unless I put it in parentheses. If you just write ln of 4 minus t, they think what you mean is ln of 4, and then you're subtracting t from whatever that is. And so we put it in parentheses to show that the ln happens to all of it. Okay, how about the next group? Number 10 through 18, is there one we should look at? Miss Rice, let's do number 15. Marvelous. Let's look at number 15, shall we? So sometimes what can be helpful if you have an ln problem is to rewrite it as a log with a base. So I would say instead of ln, I could call this log base e. It is not necessary to do that, but sometimes it's nice so that you know what your base is and you can start with that. So the base of our exponent is going to be e. What should the exponent be? 3. So e to the 3rd equals 2x minus 1. All right. So 1 through 18, we feel comfortable with those? We're good? Okay. Are we ready to look at one of the expanding problems? Yes? Okay. So the expanding problems, they start off a little bit more simple, and then the further you go in that section, the more complicated they get. Are we good with 19 through 24, or do we want to do one of those? 24? Okay. Now, your clue for 22 is that you can rewrite this as ln of d to the 1/3. cube root really means that that thing that's underneath it is raised to the 1/3 power. So if you had the square root of x, that's x to the 1/2. If you had the 5th root of y, that would be y to the 1/5. So cube root of d is d to the 1/3. Okay. Number 22 is not done. It's just written in an alternate form, okay? So you still need to expand it. All right, so for 24, we have log base 2. I'm going to write log base 2 twice because I have like 2 factors that are being multiplied. I have a z and I have a z minus 1 squared, okay? So I'm going to write log base 2 of z. Anyone know why I crossed my z? So it doesn't look like a 2. You'll notice a lot of math teachers do that. Nadia, make sure you text me so I know that's what I just said, okay? All right. These are multiplied, so what do I write next? Plus. Multiplied means plus. And then this time I have a log base 2 of z minus 1. The z minus 1 is squared. What do I do with that 2? Bring it to the front. So z minus 1 was squared, I bring it to the front. Okay? So anytime you have an exponent, it just moves it to the front. Okay? Make sure if you have questions on this stuff that you ask them. These, as I can see based on how quickly you guys are moving through this worksheet, these aren't necessarily difficult. This is one of the things that shows up in calculus all the time that students forget. The most common one that I see that students forget is that bringing the exponent to the front. All my calculus students forget that all the time, and they get multiple choice questions wrong because they didn't know the answer was there. Okay? So definitely make sense of all this stuff. Ask questions if you have them. Don't let yourself half get it and move on, because this is something, especially those of you moving on to calculus next year, because this stuff shows up a lot. Okay? All right. So go ahead and keep working on that. I'll check in on you in a little bit. Okay. I just want to make sure we're still doing okay. So is there a problem on this side of the page that we want to do together? 27? All right. So on 27, we have lots of exponents, right? So we have things that are going to move to the front. We also have 2 things on the bottom, which can be kind of confusing sometimes if you have multiple things down there. So how many times am I going to write the word log? 3. So I have log base 7 of x. What do I do with that exponent of 5? Move it to the front. Okay. This is a division problem, so what comes next? Minus. Log base 7 of y. What's the exponent on the y? A 1. Okay. So I don't really have to put a 1 in front because we already knew there was just one of them. All right. Now the trick is, do I put a plus for the z because they're multiplied on the bottom? Or do I put a minus for the z because it's also on the bottom? You put a minus, okay? Minus. So I'm thinking of this as minus means it's on the bottom of the fraction. Another minus means I'm still on the bottom of the fraction, okay? So this one would be log base 7 of z. The z has an exponent of 3. Where does that 3 go? To the front of that piece, okay? If it makes you uncomfortable to have 2 minuses, even though those 2 things were clearly being multiplied, the way that you might like to write this that will make you feel better is you can say minus and then you can put parentheses, and you can say that both things on the bottom were technically multiplied together, and so you could write it like this. That way the minus is saying you're on the bottom, and this plus is saying 2 things were multiplied together on the bottom, okay? And if that makes you feel better to write it that way, you're still right. Both answers are correct, it's just 2 different ways of thinking about it, okay? And if you consider these 2 forms, it's kind of like here we took out like a GCF of a negative, and then we have that plus in between then. Yeah?
This might be a dumb question, but where do you get 3 from?
The 3...
I see the z with the 3, but why do you write it 3? Why did you say you write it 3?
So the reason why we write the 3 in the front is because technically...
Not, you see how when you first started, you said how many times I'm going to write log, and you said 3 times?
Oh, 3 times, because we have 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Any other questions on this page we should do? Bottom section, any of these? 35? Okay. So what does this 3 in the very front mean? What does a 3 in the very front mean?
It's an exponent.
Exponent of 3 for like the whole problem, right? So it means we're going to take ln of stuff, and that stuff is going to be raised to the 3rd power. That's what that 3 in the very front means. All right? So I've got that done with. So first I see ln x. What do I do with that? Yeah, I'm just going to put x inside here, right? Okay. Then I have a minus. What does that mean? Yeah, it's negative, right? And so what does that mean with logs? We've got adding and subtracting. What does subtracting mean? Division. Okay, divide by. So what's on the bottom? X plus 1. This is another divide by. So this x minus 1 also goes to the bottom. It looks a little weird like that, but technically it's not wrong. So if you want to fix it so it doesn't look so silly. So whenever you have 2 minuses in a row like that, it's kind of like this is saying I'm on the bottom, this is saying I'm still on the bottom, okay? If this had been a plus right here, it would have bounced it back up to the top, okay? So whenever you have multiple logs and things have a plus with them, they're going to go on the top of the fraction. Anytime you have multiple things with a minus with them, that means those things would go on the bottom of the fraction. It does not matter what order they're in, okay? All right. Any other ones we want to go over? Okay, go ahead and turn the page. I just want to make sure that we can do this assignment when we get to it. So let me hand out the monster page real fast. So this worksheet does not give you enough space to do the problems really. So you can do it on the back of this monster sheet, you can do it on a separate sheet of notebook paper, you can do the problems wherever, but I do expect you to do the problems and actually turn in the work for them, okay? So somewhere you need to do the work. All right, so number 1 says find the inverse of each function and then match it with the correct answer, okay? So it's kind of like a multiple choice problem where they gave you 4 different answer choices. So if we are finding the inverse, what is the very first thing we do? Trade x and y, okay? So I'm going to say this is my y equals, so I'm going to say x equals -6 log base 2 of y minus 8. So when I find inverses, the very first thing I do is I trade my x and y. After I trade my x and y, what am I supposed to do next? Solve for y. Okay, so what is something I could move away from the y? The -6. So I'm going to go ahead and divide by -6 on the right and divide by -6 on the left. So I have log base 2 of y minus 8 equals x over -6. Right? Now, the y is inside parentheses, and these parentheses are being protected by a log. So we have to undo the log form, and the way that we undo that is we turn it into exponential form. So we've learned in the past multiply and divide are opposites, right? Those are inverses. Add and subtract, those are opposites. Square root and squaring, those are opposites. Now, whenever you see log and you want to undo the log, you turn it into exponential form, okay? So what is the base of our exponential form? 2. So I'm going to say exponential form is a base of 2. 2 to the... 2 to the x over negative 6, and I know that because I go to the other side of the equal sign, right? Equals y minus 8, okay? And see, as soon as I got rid of that log, now it's really easy to get y by itself, okay? So the opposite of log form is exponential form, and so that's why we just turned it into exponential form. All right, how do I get the y alone? Plus 8. So I've got y equals 2 to the x over negative 6 plus 8. Technically, I should go back at the very end and say this is my inverse function, so I'm going to call this f inverse of x. And if you look, which answer is the one that it should be? The second one right here. So that means that on your monster, you are going to draw feet that look like this. So everyone's going to have, but it's fun because then you can see the variations in how people draw. It's kind of entertaining either way. Yes. Do you have to draw the monster? No, but then you're a lame-o. So it's up to you if you want to be a lame-o or not. Okay? So that's how the monsters work. Each of the problems will give you a feature to draw on the monster. All right? So in theory, everyone should have slight variations of the same thing. Okay?